Hello and welcome back to a less than festive Cardiff Central podcast after the Blue and Blacks fell to a disappointing derby defeat at the hands of Scarlets on Friday night. We'll be going over where Cornel Van Zyl's side fell short, any positives to cling to, and some more halftime entertainment shenanigans. There's also an update on the bidding process for the club. The Rags restore some Christmas cheer on Saturday. We'll pick some favourite moments from 2025 and look ahead to the games against the Dragons and the Ospreys. Joining me on the panel this week, a slightly sad panel prior to Christmas, unfortunately, was Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
Yeah, I think it's too soon to do this podcast. That's how it feels. Nadolig Llawen, pal.
Yeah, we are recording on Sunday night as well this week because of Christmas, and yeah, that extra 24 to sort of 48 hours just gives you a bit more perspective, doesn't it, when you're back to work on the Monday? But we'll crack on. Tony Esposito as well. Tony, how are you?
I'm feeling quite good actually because I watched the future of Cardiff's backline yesterday against Bridgend, so I can take the positives from that and go from there. So
Rags to the rescue as always.
as always,
We'll start on Friday night, though, with the first Welsh derby of the festive period. Cardiff falling 17-21 to the Scarlets. Scarlets took an early lead to Eddie James before their discipline deserted them a bit at the back end of the first half with yellow cards for Josh McLeod and Gareth Davis. Mason Grady went over out wide during that period. Callum Sheedy added 5 points off the tee for a narrow half-time lead. Gareth Davis put the visitors back in front with a slightly fortuitous bounce in the build-up early in the second half, but an excellent Josh Adams score from a Callum Sheedy kick restored the Cardiff lead. Davis then produced his annual interception try against Cardiff to put the Scarlets back in front, and despite plenty of huffing and puffing in the last couple of minutes, Cardiff could not get over for the winning score late on. Quite a lot of sad three-word thoughts as well. I didn't even tweet it until Saturday because I was drinking some drinks on Friday instead of tweeting. I thought, there's no way I'm going on my phone here. I'm going to tweet something I regret otherwise. Waited for Saturday, and there was still a lot of anguish. So Steve went with self-destruct rugby. Ben said a bitter disappointment. Liam just went with pain, pain, pain. Rob said big opportunity blown. Matthew said get basics right. Geeks are cool. Went with business as usual as Scarlets beat us at the Arms Park once again. Neil said threw it away. Blindside said too many errors. Paul went with our own undoing, and David finished it with poor game management. Simon, your general thoughts on the 80 minutes of Friday night?
Well, I'm glad. Whilst I said it feels too soon, I'm glad we didn't record it like after the game on Friday. I think it probably would have been a little bit more uncensored than how I feel about it today. I just really disappointed. All week I had a feeling that they whilst they haven't had a great start to the season, the Scarlets, it's been a tough start for them. Probably bottom of the league. They're not a bottom of the league side. You look at the back line that they brought, it's big, it's physical, it's quick. And all week I just had a feeling that they're just going to turn up, aren't they? But I think the bigger disappointment was it feels like we could have won it, and we just for the first time probably this season got a bit frantic, lost our heads completely, just didn't really make the right decisions at the right points of time. Fair play to the Scarlets. They defended. There was certainly an amount of uh, rugby gamesmanship, shall we say. There was a lot of sitting down by their players. They were well rested. But it's managing the clock, isn't it? And we didn't do it. So fair play to them. They went, was it something like 422 entries they had and 3 tries, and it's something like that. I think if you look at the statistics for the game, you'll wonder how we lost it. But you actually watch the game, you go, oh, I know how we lost it. Just every time we had a penalty or went for their line, you could throw a blanket over our players at points in terms of when they were down to 14 and 13, we were just banging away at the line, and it just wasn't going to happen. And yeah, it's just sad and disappointing because it's probably the worst we've played all season, to be honest. And to do it at that point, it's the worst we've played. And I still think with a couple of other decisions, we probably could have won it. And it would have been like the games that we have been winning, where it's a bit like, oh, how we suddenly like 14 points down. Oh, we're going to come back and win this now. That's great. So yeah, really disappointing. But I don't think it wasn't awful. You know, we weren't blown away at all. I thought we actually contained them pretty well. Didn't have huge number of line breaks. We seemed to defend okay. Just went to sleep for Davis's first try round the side of the ruck. Obviously, the interception was just you just knew it was going to happen. And maybe we could talk about. I said that I think Mulder's pass is more interceptable maybe than Davis because he fires the ball further out into midfield, it seems. So I think he was always on for that. But it is what it is. You've got to brush yourself down and move on.
Tony?
The Scarlets are obviously a lot more well rested than they normally are for an away trip because obviously it's quite a short distance that they've got to travel, being all from Pontcanna. That one was just for Steve. But outside of that, like, yeah, I agree with a lot of the three-word result reactions, man. Sunday. It was disappointing because, and I said this on Twitter, and any other team, we'd have put them away by half time. But it's the Scarlets, and they know how to get us. And it's the Ospreys have a tendency of doing this as well. So that's why I'm quite worried about New Year's Day more than anything. They frustrate us really well. They managed to stifle us. They took momentum out of the game when we had it. There were key moments where you'd hope our leadership team step up and go, look, we just need to put the scoreboard pressure onto them and take it off us. And we talked about this a lot last year. We don't kick penalties, and we've done it a bit more this year. But on Friday night, we seem to go, well, we're the better team here. We're playing all the better rugby. Let's just go for tries. But it's a derby, and they're always tight. They're always horrible. Take your opportunities. And if that means you just go, we're in front of the post, we're 5 yards, 10 yards out, we take the 3 points, we get the ball back, we go again, we just work it, we exit properly, we work it. We've got to be cleverer in those situations, and we weren't, and that's essentially why we fell short again. It felt very reminiscent of the Ulster game. We tried very hard, and I have a question on that. Do we think this is a hangover of Sherritt leaving when he did? They would have put a lot of plans in place for that first block in attack wise, and now we're out of that first block. We've not had that sort of expertise in how to attack like Ulster were a bit stagnant. We were a bit we were stagnant on Friday night. How do we get out of that? And that is just a question. Is that are we seeing part of that from the loss of a head coach?
It's interesting because we've lost a lot to the Scarlets at home, as we mentioned on last week's pod. Like, we haven't beaten them at the Arms Park since 2019 now, and there's definitely, I've definitely felt worse after Scarlet's home defeats in this, and think about that one sort of late, maybe March time under Dai Young, March, April time at home, when they like proper took us to the cleaners. We sort of played them twice in 2 weeks, I think, somehow, didn't we? And they'd done a job on us there. And after those ones, it was like proper like anger, like we didn't look up for it. Whereas this one is pure disappointment. That even take away that it's a derby or anything, just look at that from a Cardiff perspective. Like, we did everything but win that game, pretty much. In terms of
right.
We dominated possession, we dominated territory. Set piece was pretty good. Even like we conceded 3 tries, one's an interception, so that's nothing to do with defence. And then the first Gareth Davis one, I said in the intro, is like a little bit fortuitous. So there is a bounce that goes down there, and that can go anywhere. And if that comes towards us, then you're fine, and it goes towards them, and they score. The first try was a touch soft, maybe, but I didn't think that defensively we were, stretched at any point, particularly by them. I think attack wise, we had it a little bit in the home game last year, I seem to remember as well, where we had a man advantage and huffed and puffed towards the end and just couldn't get over them. I think we struggle a bit against Scarlets because we're quite similar, and I wonder if they know what to expect a little bit. Some of our shapes, attacking shapes, are quite similar. We also are some of the more settled teams at the moment in the last 2 3 years. So they've got used to playing our sort of players. There's a lot
Yeah.
of Wales international colleagues there through that midfield section as well, who, you see when Blair Murray gets helped off at the end and Sheedy's going over to console him, which no problem with, but that just shows like Sheedy's only just been in the camp and they're already close enough that he feels he can do that. So they're playing against each other a lot in national team camps. It's just it is just frustrating that we just couldn't get over the line at the end. Then we'll move on to sort of kicking at goal and kicking for corner in a second. I think not to make it a headline as such, though, Simon, but one of the three thoughts from Sean was why kick then, and that I wonder not just about the decision, but I wonder if that Callum Sheedy cross kick right at the end just sort of encapsulates in a moment the frustration that we just could not break them down on the night.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does absolutely. I mean, that kick's got to be on it's got to be really precise. Was it Grady out on the wing over there?
No, it was
Win
Winnett, wasn't it?
Yeah, Grady had made the breakdown the right wing to get us into the 22.
So, it's got to be really precise. He is covered out there. I don't know. It does feel like just a frustration of we're battering away. We need to try something different. It didn't come off. How many times out of 100 is that cross kick going to come off?
But that comes back to the scoreboard pressure thing. Like there was a yellow card where Johnny Williams got binned right in front of their posts. They, like you mentioned, sat down because they had an injury. That took all our sting out of it. But take the points, we would be a point down, 10 minutes against a yellow card.
Yeah.
And then if we're in the similar situation that we are at the end of the game, we're looking for a drop goal or a penalty. It puts a lot more pressure on the Scarlets' defence because they know they've got to be squeaky clean. But we've heaped the pressure back onto ourselves.
Well, we were chasing the game from
exactly
from the start. Both teams tried disallowed, which was just, I mean, whether it was actually knocked on or not, I don't know. But it's then bizarre that it's not a penalty try because I could see that the tight head comes in from the side at a maul that's about a metre, 2 meters from the line that's travelling forward, and the ref goes, that dislodges the ball, that causes the knock on, so it's a penalty, but no try. And I'm kind of like, well, if that is the case, the maul is moving forward. You're not then you need to go and look at the actions of the tight head and go, well, has that prevented a try? And he has. Yeah. That ball was going over and it squirted out and both dived over. From that point onwards, I think we got it in our head that they were there for the taking. I think if we had scored at that point, that's a yellow card as well if it's a penalty try. I genuinely think we go on to win it. I know it's early on, but then they go down the other end with their first attack and score. And from that point, we're constantly chasing the game and we're not, that penalty in front of the post, I agree with you, Tony, you put that over because the Scarlets were leaking penalties when they were under pressure in their own 22. They leaked a lot in the first half. It's decision making that just went wrong. And I think, what I hope is you put it down to a bad day at the office and go, it was just, we're probably due a poor performance because in the season you get a few. It just so happened it was that. The fact is it was probably our worst 80 minutes of the season and we still probably should have won. Says maybe how far we've come to try and be positive about it. But we didn't give up many chances. As I said, I think the defence looked good. We were just, bottom line is we made poor decisions. They managed the game much better than we did. They managed the clocks much better. I think it was last season, Dan, where we were up. They had 2 men sin binned.
Yeah.
And we couldn't score because we just kept trying to go wide from our own 22 rather than breaking them down, earning the ground, earning the penalties, then going. We just looked frantic again. And I think you're right with what you say, Dan, about and Tony, about some of the more experienced heads, and there were plenty out there, should have just gone, let's just go through the phases here. Let's not panic. And that kick at the end, I think you're right, Dan, encapsulated the entire game.
Yeah.
Because there was no need to push that kick. We could have just gone through a few more phases, made a bit more ground, just kept going. But I think we lacked patience for the entire 80 minutes. And I think that's where, if we want to be in that top 8, with what we fourth at the moment, third maybe.
Third, I think.
Third.
Yeah, with also that Ulster game in hand. But yeah,
if we want to stay in those positions in these type of games, we've got to be patient. The top teams do it brilliantly, don't they? You go down to 13 men and they just bang at the door, even from halfway, just keep sucking players in, and then strike. And I think you said last week, Tony, if we get in front, we need to kind of just keep our foot on it and let them know. And we just didn't.
Yep, exactly.
It was just a kind of shrug the shoulders. It just feels like that. It genuinely feels like close the book, move on. I listened to Belcher's interview afterwards, and he sounded really annoyed by it all, and was total hands up of that isn't us. That wasn't good enough. And it wasn't. Fair play to the Scarlets. They did what they needed to do. I didn't think they needed to do much to do it, and I think that's the other disappointment. It wasn't kind of like we've been beaten by a team that is so much better than us. Don't think we really challenged them. They're big physical guys. Their second rows are big physical guys. We didn't seem to kind of try to move them about. I think we fancied our set piece against theirs. And I think, again, you look at the stats and all the stats are in our favour, but it just shows what a nonsense just looking at stats is about any rugby match, because you don't get the full flow of the game.
To frame that conversation, Tony, then to get into it about, I think the main talking point for Cardiff fans has been kicking for post versus kicking for corner on the night. There was a couple of 3-word thoughts. Harley said efficiency uncharacteristically lacking. Charlie said wasteful and inaccurate. And then Rob went with must take kicks. And Paul said kick more penalties. The 22 entry stat varies slightly depending on how you determine a 22 entry. I think there was quite a high 20 plus number from the BBC, which I think involves if you enter the 22 and then you win a penalty and then you kick to the corner, you re-enter the 22 in terms of that statistic, which I don't know, it doesn't quite work for me. But it was certainly, I counted, I think 14 when I watched it back, and there was a couple there where sort of like there's a little toe in the 22 as well. But the other stat then is that we had 10 kickable penalties during the game. We took the one on the stroke of half time, which Sheedy knocked over, of course. We scored a try from going to the corner from one of them, but that means it was 10 points having converted the try from 10 kickable penalties. And there was 2 questions that came in, which I think so 3 questions, one on one side and 2 on the other side. Rob said, why were we so inaccurate and lacking in composure versus the Scarlets in the red zone, where we've been pretty ruthless in the same area of the pitch since the start of the season? And then David, on the other hand, asked, should we bring back the lost art of building a lead kicking from the tee? Well, Charlie said, do we need to be more open to taking the 3 points rather than going for the corner? I think that kind of sums it up. Do you look at it more as we need to work on being more clinical when we do go to the corner, and that's fine, it's worked for us before? Or do you look at it as we need to start taking 3 points and building that scoreboard pressure?
There's context to whether you should kick for the corner or not, and I didn't dislike many of the choices. I thought we could have taken the points at certain times. The egregious one is the one I mentioned earlier, where if we'd been able to take that penalty within 30 seconds, 40 seconds of it being given, fine, because you've got momentum, you've got the go forward. They're panicking, they're breathing heavy. They're already knowing, oh, well, we give them one away. We can't do anything else. But then they've had to sit down. The game's slowed. Crowd's gone out of it. Players have come out of it. And then we've gone, let's tap and go. And we get turned over like a phase after. There has to be context in what we do. And maybe if we go to the corner, maybe it's slightly differently because it's just a new set of phase. But we tapped and went because it was right in front of the posts. Otherwise, you take the points. It's 2021. They're down to 14 because Johnny Williams is off. And you've got 10 minutes in the last 15 to attack against 14 men. There's context to all of them. I think we should kick more penalties. I think we should build pressure, mainly because we stifle teams really well now. Like, we can get at them forwards-wise. We never used to be able to, so we used to have to ping the corners. But now, because we can stifle teams, because we can stop them, we need to be more ruthless. And part of being ruthless is not just go for the corner and go and kill them at the try line. It's take the points, make them struggle to get back in the game, make them chase tries rather than us, because from their mistakes we score tries. Like that's like there's the context around all of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to address Ed's question on Blue Sky about maybe Cardiff
It's three-part
arrogance.
question. There was only two-part question.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's just how we are. We don't kick penalties. You know, especially early in games. If we get I I think the intention is to build momentum and get an early score, and we kick to the corners. But Tony, I think is spot on. I was thinking it myself that it wasn't like they were making lots of line breaks. We were struggling defensively. That we kind of think, oh right, we've got to get a 10-point lead or a 14-point lead because we're going to concede here. I'd never felt at any point that we were under huge amounts of pressure. It was just opportunist. One kind of well worked score, I think, from a line out, the first one,
Yeah, I think so.
and a couple of opportunist scores that have undone us. So I think in those type of games, you can go, actually, we're holding this relatively comfortably. I think you can go, let's kick the penalties, let's put the pressure back on them, let's see what we can do, because we're not conceding ground, we're not conceding penalties, we're holding them. So it's a learning thing. I can understand the momentum, because there are points where you just want to go, just put it in the corner, go on, let's test them early on, let's see if they fancy it. And to be fair, off those penalties, one of those penalties we did score and it was disallowed. But I think the top teams in the derby would just take the points and build it. And I think that's just it's a stylistic thing, but for the coaches, it's also a learning thing to go, we don't get into that situation again.
There's a cricket adage of you take the score and you add 2 wickets to it, and that's probably what you really are. With our games against the Scarlets, we should look at the score and add 7 points onto it for the inevitable Gareth Davis interception and work from that. So we start the game 7-0 down and we work from there, because he's gonna score an interception, because he does every year, and that's what we build on, right? Like, just go from there.
And you wonder,
So the old plus 2 wickets.
That interception, Mulder had only just come on as well, and it just felt like that's got to have been scouted anyway. Everybody knows, and it just felt like a timing issue as much as anything. New scrum half comes on, wants to kind of get the game going, wants to. When he came on, I think it took us a while to adapt a little bit to him.
His arms didn't look,
because his pass goes much further into midfield. It's like Ben Thomas channel, which is probably that little bit more airtime that's ideal for Gareth Davis to kind of, at that point, we got a line out. It is that kind of 14-point swing, really, because we're on the front foot, and Gareth Davis has obviously thought, well, I'll test him now. Let's see if he will throw this pass. Just one of those things.
I think what Simon said then about the coaches learning, I agree with Tony as well. That penalty decision on 60 minutes where Johnny Williams goes to the bin, it has to be 3 points. I don't think there's any question that to make the score 21-20 there, and that there was such a long break. So there'll be a question about on-field leadership there, I don't doubt. But there was also more than enough time for the coaches to get the message down onto the pitch to say, no, we're taking 3 here. And it felt a little bit, and I think this maybe is something is easier to say in hindsight, obviously, after a loss, looking back on the season so far. But Cardiff have been a little bit rigid in our ways this season, and that comes, the rigidity shows itself in our attacking template at times, where we're quite, this is the move we're going to run, and this is the players who are going to be in this position, and that's how we're going to do it. And if that doesn't work, then we'll just try a different move going the other way. There's not a lot of off the cuff stuff there. And then, that's been an identity of Cardiff, kicking for the corner and going for tries and playing that exciting brand of rugby, and that's fine, but absolutely, it has to be in-game management as well. We have to be flexible enough to say, right, we're bang in front of the post, we're 15 meters out, we're way too far out to be tapping this. It's an absolutely ridiculous decision to be tapping. If we're going to go for the corner, it hasn't really worked so far in this game. We keep getting held up. We're not getting a lot of change out of their tight defence. We can And then there's also an element of being confident in ourselves in tight games that we can win those and we can be
Yeah.
comfortable to say, we're just going to cut it down to 1 point and then we're going to put the ball in your court and say, defend this. They
Yeah.
conceded they conceded 13, 14 penalties already by that point of the game. Our discipline had been very good. We'd coughed up a fair amount of ball, but we hadn't been turned over on the floor a huge amount like we were against Ulster. We lost quite a lot in contact there. We weren't doing that too much on Friday night, I didn't feel. I think there's maybe an element of not feeling quite comfortable in our own skin as a team towards the top of the table there as well. And you can say that it's a maybe slightly false league position because of the opposition that we played, but you can only play what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And why not back ourselves to continue doing that against top like in Welsh derbies and against some of the better teams that will play in the second half of the season. So disappointing stuff there. Tony, Simon mentioned the bench a little bit there. Mulder was a topic of conversation in some areas. A few of his passes went a bit loose, and there was obviously the interception as well. But just generally, bench impact wise, did we get enough from the players that came on? And then also, did Cornel Van Zyl get it right in terms of when to use his bench and not bringing on the likes of Rory Thornton, Jacob Beetham, only going with 6 of 8 coming on in that final quarter?
I think the scrum went all right, but and obviously Faletau had a couple of really good line breaks. There was a superb clearance by Alex Mann in the last couple of phases before the infamous cross kick. That was like they were on the ball and Mann has absolutely leathered him. I The players that came on did all right. Mulder grew into the game after an initial 5 or 6 minutes where he's a bit slow, but I think we missed someone like Bowen, just that lad that can get the crowd up as well. Like he's box office, isn't he? But also, I didn't think Brady had a particularly great game. He was good with ball in hand, but I wanted more from him. I'm surprised we didn't bring Beetham on because I just wanted to see something else. Like Dan mentioned earlier, stuff wasn't working. Change the stuff that's not working. And maybe I'm seeing something different with Grady, and because I've seen people saying that he had a good game, but use the players we got. Use Beetham. Bowen should have been there, or even Stevens. You just felt that game needed that little bit of electricity from us, and because that would have then got the crowd up again. And we're naturally a quiet crowd because we're nice reserved people in Cardiff. Um, and that gets the crowd up, gets the team up, gets the crowd up, gets the team up. Cyclical. Yeah. So no to answer your question.
I didn't. I have to say, I thought some of the criticism of Mulder was a touch harsh. He's obviously a little bit rusty after
Yeah.
a broken cheekbone, but I thought generally in that final passage of play where we must have been touching 20 phases there before the Sheedy cross kick. I thought his tempo really aided that attack, and if we had retained the ball in hand there and gone into midfield and played again, I no doubt that he could have helped lead us actually over the try line, but. I did find the not using the whole bench odd in the circuit. Like McNally and Knott were going well, and the backs were going all right. But I just thought some fresh legs would have been really helpful in that last 5-10 minutes. And I'd have probably considered Beetham for Millard.
Maybe.
I just thought Millard was lost a little bit in the physicality of that Scarlets midfield where they basically picked 3 12s in Hawkins, Williams and Eddie James, and they set out to try and go at us a little bit there. Ben Thomas had a decent carrying game in spite of that, but I thought Millard got a little bit lost in the size of that midfield, and that Beetham coming in would have offered a little bit of something different that the Scarlets maybe hadn't seen from us before. But that's all a little bit of a hindsight one, that one. But
do you think Van Zyl's worried about the Dragons game? Especially from a Thornton perspective, we don't want to bring him on because if we lose Knott or McNally to an injury and Thornton picks something up in the last 10, 15 minutes when he's on, then we're proper out.
I suppose my counter to that would be if he goes into the game thinking that, fair enough. But during that middle part of the second half, when the game was there for the taking, and you think the bench could have that real impact, I'd have gone after him, try to win this one, and then just muddled through the Dragons one at that point, probably.
That comes back to your point though about the rigidity.
Yeah, flexibility in game.
I think as well, you bring on Thornton, you start going after their line out a bit more.
Yeah.
In that
Even
last
seven
in
a
that,
story.
in that last 10 minutes, because this season they haven't had a huge amount of confidence. The Scarlets, they've wobbled. Their set piece was wobbly, I'd say, functional enough, but yeah, it feels like a few decisions on field, off field that you can put right. I think it just heaps pressure on Boxing Day. I'm with you, Dan. Obviously, I think we'd all would rather have won Friday night. It goes without saying, but I think to try and take the positives from it. I think it was our worst 80 minutes all season, but it was our worst 80 minutes because we lacked composure, we lacked sensible decision making. It wasn't like we were just blown away and we're awful. It was just the things that we've been doing and the resilience we've been showing just ran out. For 80 minutes. And I think we always struggle when teams go down to 13 players. I don't know why. We just always seem to now we're going to score loads of tries rather than earning it. And I think that's a common Cardiff thing year after year. I thought Scarlett's targeted Sheedy during that period in terms of the pullbacks to him, put him under a huge amount of pressure. Before that Murray knock on, I swear Al Lawrence scored. Everyone that's in that corner said he didn't, but I'm like, I swear he scored because I saw the ball brush some white as he was going down, but it wasn't checked or anything. So it must have been shorter than I thought it was. I don't know what it looked like on the replay, Dan. I haven't been able to bring myself. I started watching it again this afternoon. I thought I can't do this. I'm just gonna have to go on vibes tonight. I think the other thing is, coming back to the penalty, Sheedy's kicking from the tee was really good.
He's never going to miss again.
It was really, those are tough kicks. It was still kind of really wide and he was kind of nailing them. So it wasn't kind of like in previous seasons, maybe we haven't kicked penalties because we haven't got the range in the kicker, or the kickers, it's a bit, Sheedy's hit and miss and not quite sure. You just feel that isn't as much of an issue. And maybe this is adapting, one, to being high in the league. We've got a team that's come to Cardiff that are rock bottom, not necessarily low on confidence because they would beat us, but we're there to be shot out. We've taken it on ourselves that we should be winning these next 3 games. Their team, that game and the next 2, their team's at the bottom of the table. We're not at the bottom of the table. We've got 26 points. It has been a good season. And maybe we're just not in the mindset of we just got to grind these wins out in these games and really put the teams at the bottom of the table to the sword, even if it is just like a 23-21 win.
With that in mind then, Simon, this game, I suppose, do you view it as more of we've got a bit of a mental block at home against the Scarlets where we haven't beaten them at the Arms Park in so long? Or do you think there is a real potential that this could kind of derail us a little bit and knock us going into that Boxing Day game where we might look back at the end of the season, we missed out on the playoffs and think, oh, that loss to the Scarlets just sent us on a bit of a dodgy run, and that's where we lost the points that we required to get in the top 8.
I mean, we've always said that this Christmas period determines kind of how far we go in the season because of the final block, but also these are the games that we need to be winning to build momentum going into that final block after the Six Nations. I don't know. I think I get the impression that we're resilient enough to take a loss like that and go, okay, back to basics. We lost that game. We didn't necessarily obviously we got beaten, but we didn't necessarily, get beaten in that way. We have thrown away that game because we had plenty of 22 entries. We had plenty of field position. We tightened up on the tap and goes. There's not even any invention around our tap and goes. It's just Belcher, the smallest player in the front in the pack, who his carrying belies his size, kind of cannonballing in as the first carrier, and then let's see where we go from there. So it's not even like we've got some clever moves to move their defense. It's just running straight at them and seeing what happens.
Those tap and goes from 5 meters out are probably one of the top 2 things I hate in modern rugby. The other one being the slap back from a catch. That and tap and go from 5 meters out when you just run into the teeth of the defense can get in the bin. Sorry,
Yes.
Simon.
No. I think so. I think we're not. Everything that went wrong is easily put right. It's not a case of. I agree with you, Tony, as well. I think having Bowen, that would have been a game where you need a game breaker.
Yeah.
You need somebody just to do somebody on the outside, kick him behind, his pace at least forces Murray and others to make a decision. I'm not saying that, our kick chase was fine, it was okay, but it allows you to kick a little bit longer. And also we've seen what he can do this season in stepping people in a phone box and getting around them. And I think that was a bit of a miss as well. I mean, obviously it's a physical Scarlets backline. I mean, one of the high points for me was Grady going through Tom Rogers. Like I'm glad there was like a fence at the end of the Arms Park. Otherwise he'd have ended up in the Taff. He seemed to be looking for him at times, Grady. There was one point where he kind of intercepted the ball and then he could have run straight. And he kind of looked to his left. It was like, oh, there's Tom Rogers. I'll just run into him. But I don't think Tony, I don't think Grady had a bad game. I think he's still feeling his way back in.
Maybe
as well. And
maybe I'm
I don't think
it
wasn't kind of like the dominant performances that we've seen from him where you're like actually completely unplayable. You just give him the ball in midfield and he's skittling players. And I think he's still getting back into that. But in hindsight, you would have gone with Bowen. But I think we can make enough tweaks to that. We've got short turnaround time. Dragons that are going to come into Boxing Day bouncing on the back of dispatching a pretty good Connacht side, or a Connacht side that shouldn't be losing, conceding 48 points, which might be good in a way. That complacency that we maybe had on Friday night, suddenly it's like this is a very different game on Boxing Day. We're coming off the back of a disappointing
much more important,
disappointing performance. They're coming off the back of 2 wins and they've got that off their back that they can't win. We shouldn't take, if we play like we did on Friday, we will probably lose, just because I don't think there was enough intelligence around that to kind of, if we're just kind of meat and potato, pick up the ball and run straight. And I think we're going to need to be a little bit more inventive of it. But Dragons games are always horrible arm wrestle ones, but
not at the Arms Park though.
No, we have blown them away a couple of times, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I think I think it's been really interesting. I think it feels like quite a pivotal game now in terms of what we do there and how we handle it.
Tony, have you got any positives for us to draw towards the end of the Scarlets game? Anything that caught your eye, team wise or individual wise, that we can cling to desperately as we head towards Boxing Day?
I thought our scrum was all right. Which is a high compliment from me. All right is a high compliment as my friend who cooks for a living. We were good. We just didn't execute in key areas. Tighten that up and we're fine. Yeah. Also, the halftime entertainment was spot on.
We will come on to that in a second. I actually would go even further. I thought Grady was actually quite good. I thought on the night, I thought he had a good enough game. But I think we'll discuss. I put it in the questions for a bit later, as we'll get to. I think the question is, are we using him correctly? / how do we use him correctly?
Maybe that's
going to be the and I wonder if that question will follow Grady around for his whole career, to be honest, as the kind of athlete that Wales doesn't produce very often, and Cardiff certainly doesn't produce very often. But I thought I mentioned Ben Thomas briefly earlier. I thought he was great again, backed up his man of the match against Ulster, and he looked really good. I thought James Botham got through a lot in his hour he was on the pitch as well. The classic Josh McNally, he had a good game. He battled, and Scrum 5 did a mic'd up thing with him as well, which I thought was it's worth watching back. I think they've put the clip onto social media, but it's nothing like major, but it's just the way he talks to people and the constant communication that's coming from him on the pitch. You can tell that is a proper leader in the squad. And then another one that we say every time, but Falatav just looks great. I mean, he can have like 6 weeks off or whatever, and then there was that little inside pass from Alex Mann, and Falatav breaks the tackle out of nowhere and cruises through, and some of his work off the back of the scrums as well. Like
Yeah.
he's a very, very classy rugby player still. That even I think we can just copy and paste these quotes really for every time Falatav plays at this point. But he is great. Simon,
I mean, I think there's just something around the leadership as well, that when the game is being disrupted and slowed down, how do you, encouraging the referee to speed it up?
Yeah.
Well,
as
Ulster managed to
When
do
players
that
are
really well.
genuinely injured, I've got no problem, absolutely, but the amount of time that water was brought on, medics were on, it was totally seemingly not in keeping with the level of, it was really disruptive. When the ball went out for line outs for the Scarlets, they're really walking up, it wasn't that kind of slow, intimidating walk to the line out. It was kind of like halfway, but they were on their, it was taking ages to do everything. It was sucking that momentum out of the game. And again, fair play to them. That's what they needed to do in order to kind of control the game. But I don't think we ever got hold of it to go to the referee. Come on, we want to play.
Yeah.
Let's hurry this up. Let's get this going. Because we weren't doing that. We weren't, taking the time off the clock or anything like that. And there's a bit of thinking about how you counter some of those things with conversations with the referees and the touch judges to go, look, we want to play, but every set piece, somebody is going down, injured, medics on, water boys are on, taking a long time to come off. This is, what's happening here. Can you just keep your eye on it so that we're not, getting into a game where it's so stop-start. It was exactly the same last season, to be honest. Exactly the same. They've managed it really well. If it was us, we'd be going, "Oh, great game management! You've done really well." So I'm not kind of moaning about it in a way. I'm kind of like going, "Well, how do we respond to those type of situations when we're?
How do we get better?
Yeah, how do we go? Well, no, this isn't. This isn't acceptable." And get in the ref's ear a little bit about it, and why is every break in play somebody was going down with something, and might well have been quite legitimate. I'm not saying it wasn't legitimate, but it was just happening all the time. And the two knock-ons that led to yellow cards is pretty cynical pieces of play as well. So you just kind of feel sad. I started feeling sad, and now I feel sad about it all. But
that's why I wore my Christmas hat, Simon.
Yeah. Palachek, they get the 4 points, we get the 1. We've got 26. Let's move on.
Tony, obviously, halftime entertainment was a big part of the pod last week after some kids threw themselves at breakneck speed through a donut-shaped tackle bag. It was back to a bit of as you were, but made brilliant by the two people who were involved in the one on Friday night.
I have no idea who was trying to give away the car, but they made sure that there was no chance that they could give away that car. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if that car didn't actually have an engine in it, because they're like, oh,
you've got
to hit the crossbar from halfway, and we'll have picked a couple of people. It was one lad's birthday. I noticed his birthday. It's my birthday hat after the game when he was on the pitch. So he probably had a few alcoholic beverages. The Scarlets fan looked like he'd had a couple as well, but I don't know. He was interviewed before the game as well, because he was the lad with the hard hat with the saucepan posts. But there was absolutely no chance in any way they were making halfway. Funny to watch, but absolutely no way. I couldn't have done it either, to be fair. But
I think a professional player would have struggled to do that. They might as well have gone, "Oh, you kick it from the opposition's 22 to hit the post at the other end." Okay, fine. That's about as easy as what they were doing. It was kicking from hand as well.
I know. Bring it like in trainers, so they're not designed for that sort of thing. And our pitches, and it would have been a bit slippy. But maybe those games should change to, can you kick a 50-22 from the middle of the pitch? Can into a wheelie bin? Yeah. All right, do that. Although, would you really want a wheelie bin associated with a car selling company? Again, that goes back to was there an engine in there? There probably was an engine in there, but before Dan comments on the legal purposes, probably was an engine. It's an all upright car. Can't even remember who was giving it away.
Get sued by some local South Wales car firm now. I would have loved it if one of them had properly gone arse over tit. That would just made it,
I know it would have.
proper cherry on top of the cake. That. Um, right. I think that's probably us. And then, has anyone's got anything burning else to add for the Friday game on Friday?
I just want to just continue to compliment the club on letting people onto the pitch after the players stayed on for quite a while. Um, and and in defeat, they probably would have run off a couple of years ago. But it's really nice that they stayed on. My boy absolutely loved it. He wandered around, got his shirt signed. There were so many other kids and grown adults getting photos and stuff like that. It's just such a nice thing that they do, and the Scarlets fans obviously enjoyed it because they got to celebrate with the Scarlets players as well. And like, it's I don't think it's something that we can underestimate, or the club certainly can't underestimate the the joy that it gives people. Just yeah, so,
Yeah,
well done.
nice. A nice
We
spot.
criticize them enough, or I do. So I just want to make sure when they do stuff good, that I want to make sure that they know, man.
A nice spot to end on. That's us then for Friday's action. We'll move on to the news. One piece of news which won't linger on too much. I don't think there's a huge amount to comment on that we haven't commented on already. But Wales Online ran an exclusive on Friday morning that the bidding process for Cardiff Rugby is now down to two bidders. No confirmation of exactly who they are, but the quotes from the article included that the Welsh Rugby Union is down to the final two bidders in the race to buy Cardiff Rugby. The WRU met with both parties separately this week, which would be last week by the time you listen to this pod. One is understood to be a consortium led by former Cardiff director Martin Ryan, which is the Hollywood chaps who we've spoken about previously. Then there was also an interesting paragraph towards the bottom of the article which said it's also worth noting that the WRU has a fiduciary, I think I pronounced that right,
Easy for you to say.
duty to its shareholders to accept the best financial deal, not the most convenient one, which will get them to three professional clubs, which feels like a very marked comment towards Y11 and the Ospreys and whether they are the other bidder. I think that the feeling was that maybe Martin Ryan had perhaps picked the phone up to Steph Thomas at Wales Online to suggest that there was down to the final two, and that putting that out in the open, which I think Steph had mentioned on the Wales Online Rugby podcast last week as well, was certainly a way of just putting it out there that their bid might be better than the Y11 one, and not just in terms of what is easiest for the WRU, but there was also some program notes from the interim chairman on Friday, which I think is the first time we've seen them since he's come in. Scott Waddington wrote on the program, which is now obviously all online, that I have been updated by the WRU on the outline bids that have been received for the club, and I will continue to be involved in the ongoing process to take these forward. So I think it was mentioned by the WRU that they were hoping to get to a resolution by Christmas, and if not, they would look at a tender in the new year. I don't doubt we will hear anything before Christmas though, because this is WRU. But the noises from the Ospreys are more positive over the last week in terms of their survival. Their noises from Cardiff are more positive in terms of it being the Hollywood lads who are the front runners. So we will wait to see on that one. But I think for all of us, our position doesn't change that Y11 being the preferred bidder would be disastrous on a number of fronts. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, then at this point of the pod, please feel free to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. If your podcast platform allows you to like or comment or leave a review, please do that as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Wrap channel, like the video, and subscribe to the sister channel, the Global Gainline as well. Plenty of rugby content going out all the time. And there'll be plenty more stuff in the new year as we return towards international competition as well in that February-March window. Right, the more positive parts of the pod, Rags Corner. Cardiff beat Bridgend 49-12 on Saturday late afternoon at the Arms Park. It was an Alan Rees classic maul try that gave Cardiff the lead, but a quick fire double put Bridgend back in front. However, from there, with about 20 minutes gone, it was pretty much all the Rags. 42 unanswered points courtesy of tries from Ben Fry, who got 2 on the night. Ian Davis with a scrum half interception, which restored my faith in that particular piece of play after Gareth Davis had tried to end it. Oshan Darwin Lewis, Tom Howe on debut, and Joe Williams also scoring. There were 6 conversions from Harry Wild and 1 for Steph Manuel at the end. Tony, you were in attendance. Not many in attendance, I think. Probably being on
No, it
S4C had put off quite a lot of people in that front. Certainly put me off as I was hungover and couldn't be bothered to go into town on the Saturday before Christmas. But you were there, and it was certainly one that it paid off to turn up to in person.
it was cold. But yeah, they played really well. Like the Ben Burnell try that took them ahead was a bit comical because I think he sort of doubled back on himself 3 times before managing to get over. And then I think the first try was a bit weak as well. I think we missed about 3 or 4 tackles moving through. But outside of that, like Bridgend didn't really offer anything against us. Ex-Cardiff player Mark Thomas got yellow carded for a tackle off the ball. Obviously, ex-Cardiff player Ben Burnell scored a try. Ex-Cardiff player Ed Howley wasn't too bad. Not up to his normal high standards. Ex-Cardiff player Benji Williams was a bit of a trouble.
I'm sensing a theme.
But he was offside quite a bit. That didn't seem to get pinged. He did knock it on in the build up to their try as well, I think. Think ex-Cardiff player Joe Gatt played. If
you're going to do all of them, there was 11 of them, I think.
Well, yeah, well, I was working my way through it as much as I could. Anyway, so I have taken all great joy of winding up both my wife and my in-laws as much as I can because they are from Bridgend, and obviously I'm a Bridgend season ticket holder as well. It's disappointed to see how badly Bridgend have played this year. They've had a little bit to runs, but boy, Cardiff were impressive at times yesterday. We still look a little bit light up front at times, and I think that stops us getting as wide because Derry Cross doesn't seem to be getting as many opportunities as he was last year, and I wonder whether that's a change in game plan or at least a change because of the way we're having to run our forwards a bit more. But man, Tom Howe, when he came off the bench, like he is a large human for an 18-year-old, and his first contact carry was absolutely thunderous, like knocked the lad back. I can't even remember who it was, and his arrows looked good, and the scrum didn't change much after. Man, he is someone to watch. But yeah, it was a good all-round performance, and something that's why I'm so positive today, man. Like the back line was Ewan Davis, who played for us against Stad.
Yeah.
Stad.
Yeah.
And then you got Harry Wild, who played against Stad, kicked really well all day. Steph Emanuel, who played for us against Stad. Oshan Darwin Lewis, who's been on the bench for the first a couple of times this year. And then on the wings, you had Derry Cross, who's scoring tries for fun most of the time.
Elijah Evans was on the
right. Elijah Evans, who has played first team rugby again this year. Matty Young looked great on his steps as well. That is a backline that we could be seeing maybe even, or at least a couple of those players, maybe a year down the line, 2 years down the line. We're seeing a large chunk of those players playing first team rugby, and they looked really good yesterday. So if they can keep that momentum building, well, the future's bright, the future's blue, boys. Oh, blue and black.
Simon, I know you had a half an eye on it. I don't know if you've got anything to add on the Rags front.
No, I agree with Tony from what I saw. I thought it was everything that we should have done on Friday night. At points, it was straight running, kind of straightening up, but in space, looking to kind of sensibly offload as well, rather than there were a couple of times on Friday night was like just dive with the ball, don't try to offload. But I thought, as you say, Tony, that it's really bright, those players playing together as well and coming through together. I think it's really important because you get then the partnerships. One knows what the other one's going to do and how they're going to play as well. So yeah, really, really promising to see those. And as you say, Tony, that some of those players have already made their debuts for us. I think Emmanuel at 12, I would like to see him more involved. just so that you can take some of the pressure off Ben Thomas a little bit, because I think he's a similar type of player. He's a playmaker at 12. I don't think there's there's an experience difference, obviously, but the way in which those he plays, is very similar. So yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, just to highlight a couple of players who I think quite rightly the backline got a lot of the plaudits, and that's where the Rags have been struggling this year. Is that backline has chopped and changed a
Yeah.
hell of a lot because of first team call ups, because of Wales national team, national age grade call ups, a couple of injuries along the way as well. But it was the majority of the backline that played last season and that got the Rags moving really well, and they were back and they looked like they were just settled back into as you were really. But I thought Ben Fry was excellent. He got 2 tries. Generally, he worked around the park. He's obviously signed for Cardiff over the summer, having been out of rugby altogether for little over a year, having left Major League Rugby in America. But every week he plays, he looks better and better and better in that back row. Lucas De La Rua, I think, is coming into the category now, having had his little cameo against Ulster last week and looking good in the last few minutes of that game. He's coming into the category at SRC level of being too good for that level now.
Yeah.
And the time is coming for him to step up. I think Tom Cottle's looking much better, looking really good line out time and getting that maul functioning for the Rags as well.
He's a big lad as well.
Big guy. And then, yeah, Tony, you mentioned Tom Howe. I mean, in Christmas week, I did put the question of is he the second coming of Christ? Because the way he was being talked about, I had the English language comms on with Sean Holly and Siwan Lillicrap, but not just them. You speak to anybody who's been aware of him coming through at Glentarf, at Cardiff schools, the Cardiff age grade stuff. I mean, this guy is. I think Sean Holly even said the word "future lion" about him, and like he's literally turned 18 in the last 2 weeks and has only just been able to start playing senior rugby. But he is clearly a very, very like naturally gifted in terms of physical specimen, but also just looks like he's a very, very good rugby player as well. So
When I saw that in the rundown, I did wonder whether you meant Chris Tazunga, who
no,
went to Exeter.
well, I
And
mean,
then I had to.
there's a similar hype level, certainly in terms of them coming through. So it works on both levels. There's a double question. The next game, as it's the Christmas double headers of derbies in the SRC. So we go to Bridgend next Saturday, it's 27th. It's back to a 2:30 kickoff, just in person. It's the only way you're going to be able to see that one. Tony, I imagine you'll be there.
I will be.
You'd expect at home in front of what will probably be a pretty decent crowd at the Brewery Field without TV there, that there will be a reaction from this Bridgend team, whether they're good enough to actually then go and win the game or not. But it will certainly be a bigger task for the Rags next weekend.
It'll it'll be a much harder task because that pitch is going to be a lot heavier. It looked heavy in the Ospreys Munster game yesterday. It'll have had. Oh, it won't have had the Scarlets are away at home to the Ospreys, aren't they? But then it'll have had ours on it. It looks quite clear between now and then, so maybe there's a bit of frost. So hopefully it doesn't get too bad. Not to dwell into Steve's corner too much, but yeah, like we need to go there and we need to front up early because again they're gonna try and get at us. But they've had a tendency to fall off in games. But we really need to make sure we keep getting at them. Talking to my wife, Jo, she was talking about the disruption of losing like assistant managers and a couple of other coaches, and how the backline doesn't seem to be firing as well as it did last year. It's a Matthew Morgan attack, so ex-Cardiff player Matthew Morgan attacking backline currently. I wanted to get that last one in. But yeah, like it's a big old game because we need to keep that pressure on to make sure we can fight for a home playoff game. Yeah. And keep that
Absolutely.
momentum going as well. Like
Yeah,
just
good
that's
stuff.
the only thing that keeps me happy.
Two other pieces of pathway bits. Wales under 19 played on Friday against England under 19 at Astramernac. There was a 17-49 loss, which I don't know, feels that's sort of how we always score against England in age grade level, apart from that one game in the under 26 nations last year. But Three Cardiff players involved. Bailey Cutt started outside centre, Reece Cummings at fullback, and Gabe Williams on the bench. And there was a bunch of ex-Cardiff guys there: Isaac Godfrey, Luke Evans, Luca Woodjack, Dylan Scott, Evan Gallagher, and Jack Harrison. So I think I made it 9 of the 27-man squad coming out of the Cardiff pathway, which is still, even if they're not at the club at the moment, you'd hope that you get them back, or if you're looking at the future, you can retain a few of them. That's positive. And then the Celtic Challenge in the women's game restarted last weekend. Gwalia Lightning and Brython Thunder both fell to narrow defeats, but they're playing each other on Saturday at the Arms Park. So if you're not going to Bridgend to watch the Rags, then that's a 2:30 kickoff at the Arms Park. Tickets available on the club website, I think. And the squads are relatively strong this year. There's quite a few Wales internationals in there who are struggling to get game time in PWR over the border, so it should be quite a good game, that one, and be good to get a decent crowd down there just to try and up the level of that competition as well. Take it from sort of like a development comp to a genuine top level comp for Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. Moving on then, I'm going to add a little section here as this is our last pod of the calendar year. So we come to the end of 2025. Simon, looking back on what has been a turbulent year, certainly off field, but a fairly positive one overall on field, I would say. What stands out as a highlight for you across the last 12 months?
I was looking back trying to remember what games we played in 2020. And then I realised how many narrow defeats we had, and then I felt sad again. Um, I mean, people pick the Munster game. It felt quite statement-like, but for me, burying the Ospreys at Judgment Day last season, I think, just total domination in a way that I don't think I've seen a Cardiff side do for many a year. But we don't often have those moments against the Ospreys to actually go, we were comfortably the better side, and the points they scored were neither here nor there to the kind of result of it. I think we scored like almost all our points in the first half. Lovely tries as well. Faletau had a try disallowed. Could have been more. Just felt like second half we'll just control this out and win it. And I think that for me was my highlight in 2025. Hopefully we can keep those sort of results coming. But yeah, I mean, obviously I say the Munster game felt like a moment when everything came together. But for me, it's always any chance to beat the Ospreys.
Tony, if you've got a 2025 highlight to hand.
I'm gonna cheat because I like cheating, but it's Kieran Azarati's try against the Dragons last year, the Maserati one. That was last calendar year, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
24.
Right at the end of 2024. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it? Oh,
Was it Boxing Day?
I thought it was the Christmas just gone, but maybe it wasn't. But anyway, I have no idea. I don't know what year anything is anymore. No, but that Lions game first up, I think was a key one for us because when it got us off to a good start, it set a marker down for what the rest of the season was going to be like. That we were going to be hard to beat, and we were gonna go all out. So yeah, I'm just gonna, if it's not Maserati, it's that.
We did have one comment as well. Craig on Reddit said, it'll sound daft, but Zebra away was his highlight a couple of weeks ago due to the circumstances of the squad being mostly written off. You can see what it means to the squad post games. I've been to a lot of Cardiff games and I haven't seen players that jubilant very often. A good one that I think as well, because it's not one of the headline grabbing games, but my was the Lions one at home just after the Six Nations last year. I thought that was that set us up for that run almost towards the playoffs and beating the South African side in a key game, coming back off that Six Nations where the rest of Welsh rugby was in a bit of pits, but I think we were quite positive because Matt Sherratt had done an all right job and some of our lads had performed quite well. It just felt like we were starting to. That was where we properly started to turn a couple of the close defeats into a close win, and it was a game that we definitely would have lost the season before. Hasn't necessarily been a year of highlights as such for Cardiff. I don't think it is tricky to pick one sort of thing out like that. It has just been on field, like genuine, like quite slow progression. And I certainly feel that we finish 2025 on field in a better place than we started it, which is odd to say when you've lost the head coach, and then also odd to say when everything off field is properly burning. It's that meme of the girl in front of the burning house, like just smiling into the camera. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Simon, looking ahead to 2026, what do you sort of hope for? I suppose off field, I think the hopes are fairly obvious in terms of what we want. But
Yeah.
if you could fast forward to 12 months now, what are you hoping to look back on in that period?
I mean, I guess if you are looking back at the pod, we've topped the league, like
Yeah,
beyond the first day of the season,
yeah,
um, and to finish the year in that third, fourth position, wherever we are currently being third, is remarkable, considering everything that player group has gone through, all that the losing jockey at the start of the season. It's been incredible, and so I think there were a few questions. Does it change expectations for us this season? I think expectations were always, let's try and qualify for the playoffs. I think the talent's there to do that. I think what it changes is the mindset we've now got to have in this final, the second half of the season, which is we shouldn't be going to places thinking, oh, we're just going to kind of be scrappy and try and get something out of these games. I think we should go there with intent, an intent to play, intent to physically front up. It's going to be tough, but there's no reason why we can't build on it. I think it'd be really disappointing if the season slides away from this point and we end up in that kind of 9th, 10th position. And 26 points is a really good return for where we are and everything we've gone through, and we're blooding some really strong players coming through, as we talked about in the last segment. So we should back that completely. So I think playoffs would be where I'd like to see us. But as you say, Dan, it feels like there is incremental growth. Our set piece has got better. Our defensive unit has got better. Yes, there's things to do. If Plan A isn't working, what's Plan B and what's Plan C? But that feels within reach. So it progress maybe isn't kind of spectacular that we're kind of blowing teams away, but we're competitive. And with everything that happened before the start of the season, everything that happened last season, and the financial situation, the level of uncertainty in Welsh rugby, we're flying the flag.
yeah.
Keep doing it.
I think the overall thing is, if you could fast forward 12 months, is just still to be here would be great. Like just
Yeah,
still be in
absolutely.
existence with some sort of future laid out in front of us. That would be ideal. We'll move on then to the last part of the pod. We're not going to record between Christmas and New Year because I mean we enjoy the pod, we don't enjoy it that much. So we'll look ahead to the Dragons and Ospreys as a double preview. Obviously, we're playing the Dragons on Boxing Day, 3 o'clock kickoff, and then Ospreys away on New Year's Day. I think it's the later, is it 5 or 5:30 kickoff, that one? The graveyard shift, that one on New Year's Day. Looking ahead to those games then, Tony, I guess the question is now, having lost to the Scarlets, do we have to get 2 wins as a minimum? Is there like no other option in terms of if we want to make the playoffs?
9 points or bust. So 5 against the Dragons, 4 against the Ospreys, and that is the only thing I want. got to keep or get the momentum back and then keep going. It's the only way, man.
On the Boxing Day one in particular, Simon, we mentioned a bit earlier, the Dragons have won 2 games in a row now. I think for the first time since records began. They've scored 48 points, which also might be the most points they've scored since records began as well, in beating Connacht on Saturday evening. Does that make us like a lot more nervous for Boxing Day, or does it? I suppose the flip side of that is that they might have experienced this real emotional high, and then we're coming into it with a point to prove. Does that make us even more likely to win and add to our run of 21 games against them? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for a good game potentially, or 2 sides just cancelling each other out and it ends up 3-0. But I think as I said earlier, listening to Liam Belcher's interview, it felt like that performance on Friday hurt, and there is a point to prove. Now it goes two ways, doesn't it? With a point to prove, you either try too hard, and you end up kind of tightening up, and we get a similar type of performance as we did on Friday, or you just concentrate more on the basics. Let's get the basics done. Let's get the field position. Let's think about when we kick to touch, when we kick for the posts. Yes, they're on the back of, it's not a Dragon side that has come to the Arms Park in previous years on the back of not having won at all, or really propping up the league and struggling. They'll come on a high. I think it's a good challenge for us, in a way. If they are more competitive than maybe they have been at the Arms Park for a few years, I think that's what we need. And it comes back to the point of, if we're going to be second and third in the league, we've got to have the mentality to beat the teams that are lower down the table, regardless of if it's a derby or not. To be honest, yes, a derby adds extra energy. I think we're going to be sold out, you would have thought, by Boxing Day, but if we're going to be in the playoff picture, we've got to thrive in those conditions. So I agree with Tony. I think we've got to target the most important thing is 2 wins. Getting into those positions to 2 wins, not chasing a bonus point too early. There's plenty of time for that to come, but putting ourselves in both those games in good positions to win, because the Ospreys game, they're going to be 2 completely different games as well, and they're going to need different game plans, and we're going to be tested in different ways. So yeah, I think there is the nightmare scenario that we come out of those 3 games and we've lost all 3, and then you kind of go, well, what's happened here? That's a real problem. So yeah, I think it's key. We always know Christmas is key. It always is.
I saw the Dragons win streak as described as kids trying to behave as good as possible in the week before Christmas, so they stay on Santa's nice list, and that made me laugh.
That is good. Looking ahead to the New Year's Day game, Tony, I had a quick look back, and we played the Ospreys on New Year's Day. It started 2017-18 was the first one where we properly started that as a bit of a tradition. We haven't played it twice since then, but we've got 5 losses and a draw in that time in those games. I wonder how much of that, there's the saying around when we play the Ospreys that we struggle to beat them in the winter because they just bully us up front, and then we beat them when we play them in the summertime a bit more, maybe because we can move them round a bit. But how much is the Brewery Field, and talk slower while you have your coffee fit, how much does the Brewery Field play into that even more now with that, heavier pitch we talked about, and that sort of favouring the Ospreys a little bit?
It'll certainly work in that sort of favour, but I think we can still compete with them now. This year, I feel more confident than ever about our forward pack in those sort of environments. Like, we're a lot better attuned than we were in the downpour that cut out all the TV field stuff. Was that last year, or was it the year before?
Yeah.
And I have no concept of time anymore, especially around Christmas. There was one of those away defeats. I think we lost like 36-0 or something, and it snowed, and I was sat at one end of the Cathedral of Concrete, and you couldn't see the game down the other end of it. And I got absolutely mocked by some kids with mullets for 80 minutes. It was the worst experience of my life in Swansea, and that's saying something.
They were fashion visionaries though, because that is now in now.
But I think they had them from the first time round.
Simon, we're not going to do like a full team selection for one or both games, but just on team selections generally, I think there's a couple of interesting questions for Corneel van Zyl to broach, with a couple of players coming back to fitness now. We mentioned earlier that the Faletau had gone well off the bench. How do you foresee the management of Faletau versus Alan Lawrence, who's obviously been an absolute stalwart across the season so far? But the flip side of that is I think he's played close to pretty much every minute of the season so far. What do you think he will go with in that sense?
I think he will go with Kalupe on Boxing Day. I just think that cameo was um, just to give him some minutes in the legs. I think it's more likely that Alan Lawrence will play on a heavier pitch in Bridgend than Talupe. And that's no slight on it. I mean, the fact is that we're sitting here having this conversation about which one should it be, and there's not, that's credit to Alan Lawrence and how he's played this season.
Yeah.
You just it would usually be like, well, when's Faletau back? When's Faletau back? We need that. But we've, there hasn't been that urgency to it. But we can give him a rest. I would give him a rest. I think. I don't know where Basham is, whether he's still coming back or not. But I think we'll see a few changes. Yeah, Dan Thomas just a bit quiet on. He seemed a bit quiet on Friday, but the position he plays and the way he plays, slowing lots of ball down, potentially you don't see a lot of him. He's kind of making his tackles, and our defensive structure was really good. But I think you just want to get that dynamism back. So I'd go with Faletau. You can have Lawrence off the bench if you wanted, or if Basham's fit, you put him on the bench and he comes in at 8. But
I wonder if there's a world against the Ospreys. I don't know. It might be a little bit of like an easy selection to make when you're not actually involved in it. But is there a world where Lawrence plays 6 and Faletau 8 potentially on New Year's Day, and you just go like super direct, heavy carrying? I wouldn't put any money on that being the selection, but I think it becomes a consideration at some point for Van Zyl to get your 2 best carriers on there and see how they go in tandem.
I mean, the Ospreys pack doesn't strike as much fear
No.
in me as it has over previous seasons.
Touch all the wood, Simon. Touch all the wood.
Touch all wood. Yeah, I know, but they're always going to be a better pack than us. But I'm not sitting here going, oh, okay, I don't think we can match them. I think we can. It's whether we will or not. It's another matter. But so I think that is an option, and you can put both of them at 7, and then it is quite a big physical back row. So I think you look at conditions and who you're going to pick. I think I would put everything on getting the win on Boxing Day. I think that's key. We lose on Boxing Day, and then that Ospreys game suddenly becomes even bigger.
Yeah.
And so I think you've just got to pick the strongest side you can. You put Bowen back in. I think Millard's an interesting one because I agree, Dan. He's very quiet against, but he's so key to that like defensive structure.
Could we see Smith at 13? By the way,
You think we will? Or?
I think we'll see Smith at 13. Or yeah, on the Al Faletau thing, I think we go man, Botham, Faletau, and just go hard at them, go heavy, and go from there. I would start Smith over Millard. I think Millard needs a bit of a break. I think everyone does. It's not the sort of game where you're going to move Grady inside the 13. I think Grady probably misses out as well because of the electric-ness that we missed. And it'll be cold, and it'll be... I'd rather Grady going on to your big carrier thing at the Bury Field because he can offer that big, more heavy running. Maybe we see Beetham at 15 against the Ospreys. Yeah. Big boot, big carry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed as well if Steph Emmanuel got a game at 12 ahead of Ben Thomas.
Interesting.
But that is a pie in the sky one.
One of my other questions, Tony, going into this one was 9, Mulder versus Davis. Mulder now coming back into it. Do we write Friday off as a little bit of ring rust with those passes, and he's still the guy to get this attack properly moving, even though Davis has been good, don't get me wrong, but Mulder gets that attack going in a way that Davis just doesn't.
Mulder's to start, Davis to come off the bench. I think Mulder and Sheedy, like they've nailed down the 9 and 10 shit for me. And as much as being Wally pipped is a thing, I don't think Mulder has done or was bad enough off the bench to lose his place entirely from Aled Davis. Wally Pipp, if you look up, was the first baseman that lost his place due to injury to I can't remember.
Yeah, Babe Ruth, who's a
Babe
good
Ruth, that's the one.
good baseball knowledge. Right, I think unless there's any more points anyone wants to specifically make about these next two games, it'll be interesting games. I think that Boxing Day one is set up to be great, but I do just hope that on what looks like, well, touch wood again, that the weather's going to be quite settled on Boxing Day at this point, and we do on our pitch. We can put the Drags to the sword on that fast service. So I would very much like to see us do that. And as much as I think getting the win is important, I do think there's a statement to be made a little bit there that just to make sure the narrative doesn't build around you haven't played anyone yet, it's a false league position and all this. I think if you go and real like we did a couple of years ago, we put a lot of points on the Drags on Boxing Day, didn't we? And that was like just a reminder to everybody else as well as to the Drags that we are still the dominant team on this side of Wales.
That was the Azerati game I was thinking about. It was 2023.
2 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it would be nice to see I don't think our attacks really fully clicked.
No.
There's been moments where it's like, the tries we scored on Friday were nice scores, well worked. It would be nice to see that really click, and because I think there is a big score at some point if we can get everything working together.
And we also owe them one because hopefully you might not have noticed it if the editing seamless and pressure on producer Lee, but the Dragons record on their podcast has kicked us off hours halfway through. So that's they're playing mind games already. I've decided
they're feeling buoyant after winning 2 games for the first time in 10 years.
More excited about starting their podcast than we were about starting ours.
Right. Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Cheers, Tony.
If anyone sees me at the Bury Field on the 27th at the Cardiff game, feel free to come and have a chat. I am doing Bridgend Christmas Eve for my in-laws, coming home Boxing Day to watch a Dragons game, staying overnight in Cardiff, depending on whether my son comes to the Dragons game, driving back up to Bridgend to watch the Bridgend game, driving home, and then going back up to the Bury Field for New Year's Day as well. Love it.
He needs somebody to chat to.
Basically. I need people to chat to me that have less than 6 fingers.
Good stuff. And as I mentioned earlier in the pod, this is our last one of 2025, last one before Christmas as well. So just from all of us at Cardiff Central Pod, thank you very much for listening over the last calendar year. Thank you for your questions and thoughts and comments. They're always greatly appreciated and help make the pod a bit more interesting. And a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your families from us, all of ours. We'll be back on the first Tuesday in January, looking back on the festive period, hopefully with a happy glint in our eye, and we'll look ahead to the Challenge Cup returning then. But until then, thank you for listening and goodbye.